Hello, welcome to Netreo NUGGET 2023. Our topic for this session is cloud migration, strategy, and benefits. I'm Nhel Bontuyan, a Customer Success Manager for APM here at Netreo. I recently joined the company. I've been a software engineer for most of my career, professional career. I've also been a product owner, business analyst, and a project manager and technical architect for some of my previous projects. This session is both for those who are planning to migrate from on-premise to the cloud and for those also for those who are already in the cloud. All right, let's start this discussion with the cloud migration strategy. So, for cloud migration strategy, um, this is basically what just how you want to migrate your application to the cloud. So, there are three basic strategies, or at least common strategies employed by most companies or most application teams. The first one is the lift and shift. For this strategy, this is more of like a rehosting thing. So whatever you have in on-premise or in a physical machine, you just transfer everything without changing anything. Transfer it in the cloud, whether AWS, Azure, or GCP. So, for example, in AWS, this is um, a case where you just provision an EC2, move your web server, application server, database server there. So this is more of just transferring everything to the cloud, just to be in the cloud. Okay. And the next one, the lift and reshape. This is a bit more complicated than the first one. So you because this involves some changes in your application, maybe some re-architecture to be able to um, leverage the benefits that you can get from being in the cloud. And for some applications, reshape is actually not it's not optional because in some cases application teams or companies really have to do some remediation to their application so that it will work in the cloud. Okay, so compared to the first one, this is a bit more complicated and will take longer because of the remediation or the small re-architecture or reshaping. And then the third strategy that we'll cover here in this session is the refactoring. So for this strategy, this is the most complex out of the three because this will involve um, re-architecturing your application, changing your application. In most implementation using refactor as a strategy, the goal really is to leverage um, the benefit of being of running your application as a cloud native application. So in most cases, this they will already application teams will already be breaking down their applications, running them serverless at the minimum. Maybe they'll be using some software as a service already as components. Another common scenario wherein the refactor is required is when your business objective is really to convert your application on top of moving to the cloud. You also want to maybe improve performance, improve reliability, improve uptime of your application. So maybe you're converting your application from a monolithic application into a microservice, for example. So refactor is the way to go if you're going that way. But yeah, one drawback with refactors, I've said earlier, is this will actually take some time. And if you go from, maybe choose from lift and shift, oh no, instead of lift and shift, if you're from on premise or a physical machine, if you're going to do a refactor, the risk will actually be bigger because there will be a lot of unknowns. You'll have to consider a lot of things. Like in one of my experience, there was this one project which was migrated to the cloud, and then the team really wanted to make use of refactoring, you know, for immediate. The purpose really initially was to get that immediate cost savings. Although cost savings was the initial target, I mean benefit that the team wanted to avail. But what really happened was, because it was that strategy turned out to be too aggressive. So what happened was it took a very long time for it to complete. So it if for the migration of the entire application, it even took more than a year to do it. And for some reason, there's also, yeah, I think that um the team also wanted to make use of infrastructure as a code. So they for that specific project, um people got too aggressive and got too ambitious, I would say. um that they wanted to use Terraform already when deploying the application to the cloud. So from the start, they wanted IAC to be in place already. They wanted everything to be refactored. They wanted the app to be running as a microservice already. So it turned out actually to be a big problem, which was, I would say, unmanaged or managed poorly at that time. So it was a lesson learned for the rest of the team, actually, for that specific company, because it was a hard way to learn that being in the cloud doesn't necessarily mean that you'll be able to save on hosting cost, especially with the promise of serverless, because serverless doesn't necessarily mean lower cost for you, lower recurring cost, infrastructure cost, because if you don't even manage it well, you don't forecast your cost properly. If you make a mistake in your forecasts, you could even be spending more when you're already in the cloud than when you were still in on premise or your physical machine. One example to that is when a team actually decided to use Aurora DB immediately. So it was more of a lift and reshape. The front end was still running in EC2, but the back end was already um, reshaped to run in Aurora DB. But it turned out that that application actually had a daily job that transports lots of data to another application. So it had an ETL in place that extracts data from the Aurora DB now and moves it to another system. So it turned out that that process alone is actually too costly. And for when you're using Aurora DB with that much chunk of data that you're transferring on a daily basis, it actually could result to it did result to a very big charge for the team, actually. So when you're migrating to the cloud, it's really important to first know what you really want, your goals, before choosing even the cloud migration strategy that you will take on. Okay, so for cloud migration transformation, these are the steps that you would normally go through to ensure that you have managed risks, you've managed your risk, you've identified the risks, and um, make sure that yeah, this actually also helps minimize project failure because especially for applications that are already running in production, when you migrate into the cloud, there's actually that risk of not being able to operate your application in the same level or quality that you want when you're already in the cloud. So if you don't plan properly, you don't assess properly, you could be having more problems or problems unique to encountered by people who are already in the cloud or teams operating an application in the cloud. And even cost wise, you could have some cost charging problems once you're in the cloud if you don't plan or execute properly your cloud migration journey. So, for the transformation to work, you need to start with the rationalization. So, it has to the activity doesn't just have to be intended to migrate what you already have, but it has to be rooted to the business need as well. So you need to ask yourself, do I really need to migrate to the cloud? What are the risks if I go to the cloud? So you need to have that business objective defined first. So what are my goals? What will I get as a business person, or as a team operating an application, or or supporting an application? What do I intend to get? What benefits do I intend to get after I migrate to the cloud? So you need to do some rationalization. Um, Part of what you may want to do here is maybe calculate some total cost of ownership, see how it will impact your overall goals initially. If your application is like, for example, if your application is an always on application, how migrating to the cloud will impact that. Will it make your application or application uptime higher or lower? So you need to consider that in the rationalization phase. Next is the assessment. So you need to assess if you're already ready to move to the cloud, and what strategy would actually fit your readiness. Because if your development team, if you don't maybe if you don't hire a new member of the team who's already familiar with running an application in the cloud or migrating application to the cloud, then you're constrained to a team to run your application, support your application, but your team members are not yet adept to the the unique requirements of running or supporting an application in the cloud. So you need to be able to assess that as well. It's not just moving everything, getting the other benefits, but the team, your resources, human resources, should also be ready to do it. So going back to the strategy earlier, if you do refactoring immediately, then your people don't know how to do it yet, then yeah, it may take you longer to complete the migration. So so you really need to assess it properly. You need to assess also, aside from the human resource side, you also need to assess which company you want to go to, service provider you want to go to, whether you're going to AWS, to Azure, to GCP, to Ali Cloud. So because that will have an impact on um, how you operate also later on, because maybe your people or some of your resources are already familiar with certain service providers, which can also help have a seamless transition to that service provider. And then um, if you're going to use lift and reshape or refactor, then you also need to include in your assessment what are the services that are there, what cloud, um, for example, if you choose AWS, should you go with EC2, or should you go with Elastic Beanstalk and stuff, or should you go to containers application? So these things should go into your assessment as well, with all the factors also considered during the assessment process. So once you've done the assessment, you can move on to the planning phase. So the planning phase will include the um, how you're going to um, do the migration. What migration strategy you will adopt. Um, how you're going to pace the migration, depending. So if you choose lift and shift, for example, as a migration strategy, simply because your people are also new to the cloud, and as the person doing the planning, you're also not yet sure if your cost forecasts are accurate, because you're not that familiar with the cloud services yet. So uh, those activities will go in here, the planning phase. So once you're already confident with your cost, you already have your strategy, you already have the maybe if trainings required or so for your people prior to the actual migration itself. Once you're already done with the training, then you can move on to the migration process. So the migration process is not a straightforward activity. Um, in at least in the cloud migration, in the apps that I've migrated to the cloud with my team before, we've migrated maybe a total of 10 applications. And in all those 10 applications, we always start with a lift and shift. We do a phased migration, not a migration that's a bit complicated, like doing a lift and reshape or refactor and or something. Because we wanted it to be more manageable. And how we execute the migration is, um, we try things out in the lower environment, for example, like doing it in a dev environment first, migrate everything, make everything work, test out everything, the applications, move it there, install it there, make it work. And then if something breaks, remediate, take note of what broke. And then once you're done with the development environment, move this staging environment prior to production. Make use of your lessons learned in the development environment, make it work in staging, test it out, and then once you're comfortable with it, that's the time when you're ready to actually move to production. Um, One important consideration also, or important activity that you want to plan out properly, is the cutover. So cutover is when you plan to do the actual switching um, from your current um, maybe from your on-premise. So before switching off the on-premise and moving to the cloud instance, you need to plan what are the requirements there. If you need to migrate some data, if you need to stop, um, take down your site, for example, for a certain period, to ensure that you have enough time to copy data and move them to production and maybe do some testing. So those stuff should be included in the cutover plan. So especially for production, you need a cutover plan, because yeah, it's not as in most cases it's not as simple as just flipping a switch and all traffic should be directed to the cloud. Um, in in some cases, even in the production environment, maybe prior to switch up to your cutover, you may even want to perform some testing just to make sure that all ports are open in your production environment. um, to ensure that not just your applications would work, but also to ensure that all your operational activities, like if you're required to extract reports, for example, from your directly from your back end, you need to ensure that your tools will still work prior to that cutover. So um, your cutover plan or migration plan or go live plan in after post migration should be a holistic thing. Imagining that you'll already be operating the application in the cloud, not just making it work or run in production in the cloud, but also making sure that you're able to support it, perform your daily routines, periodic routines, because um, like for example, if you're required to generate reports periodically by extracting data from the back end, it turns out that some tools that you're using, maybe your Power BI or some sort, or some intelligence tools, or even the tool that you use for extracting data may not even be able to connect to your backend, then you will have some operational problems post migration. So you'll want to include that in your testing during migration. So after that, once you've migrated, then you operate. So operating is running, making sure that running your application, doing your day-to-day tasks, keeping the lights on, keeping your usual, being able to support your usual service requests, being able to respond to incidents, events in the cloud, for example, because there could be incidents that will occur in the cloud which you haven't actually experienced when you were not in the cloud yet. So you have to operate it seamlessly, and then after operating it, you may want, once you're ready, maybe at a certain point, once your people or your resources are comfortable enough, or once your application had stabilized in the cloud already, then you may want to proceed to the last step here in the transformation, which is to optimize. So optimization is more of a never ending process. This is more of a process improvement. But for some application teams who just recently moved to the cloud, this could mean um, adapting or re-architecturing or changing their applications to leverage more cloud native services actually. So if you started with a lift and shift, then yeah, maybe uh, under optimize you will already be doing some or breaking down your application so that in some components you'll be able to leverage maybe serverless in AWS, um, and other you know, cloud native native infrastructure. So, and if you want to also like maybe change your monolithic app into a microservice, then yeah, that can also be part of this. So the 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 goal really here is not just to be able to adopt or make use of what's available in the cloud, but what's important to keep in mind is that you're rooted to your business objectives as well. So that's why it's really important to go through the process of transforming, or which starts with the business justification or rationalization of what you're doing. Okay. All right. So um, based on in my experience, based on my experience, these were the benefits that we actually got from doing a phase cloud migration as compared to jumping to the adapting um, native cloud services already. So we did a lift and shift um, initial strategy. Initially we just did a rehosting, and these are the things that we actually learned. So with the phase cloud migration that we did, we were able to manage our risk better, because we didn't have to take on big changes. We didn't have to take on technologies or services that we're not yet familiar with. So we had time to learn the different technologies first before jumping onto more complicated ones. So that's why at the end of our cloud migration activity, we're able to at least migrate, complete the migration, stabilize the application in production, and then taking it from there. And then the next benefit is better cost management. Here, what we learned from here is, as I've shared also earlier, is about the Aurora DB, um, the reshaping that we did in one of the application, and we had to jump to that Aurora DB right away. So if only we took some time to understand it first, making sure that we understood the cost implication of everything that we did, um, then we wouldn't be we having that problem of having a cost shock because we were charged um, we got a very really high bill from AWS that time because of that. So if you face your migration, if going back to our example, if you only just initially maybe hosted it in EC2, spinning up a DB server, and then just running it from there, and then maybe once it's stabilized, learn how Aurora DB could help us. So our cost management would have been improved. And then the next one is manage capability ramp up. There were we actually also encountered lots of challenges when we moved to the cloud, and most of the problems that we encountered were rooted from the fact that we were all new to the cloud. Although we did have a training, but one yeah, there are really some issues that could pop up which you haven't you're not familiar with yet, you haven't gone through the training yet, and you just have to adopt and learn it along the way. So if we jump immediately from lift and shift directly to refactoring, so we have a lot more to learn rather than just keeping things simple at first, giving everyone enough time to ramp up, to learn more. Um, so that way, yeah, you'll actually be able to operate your application more efficiently. And then the last one is more effective redesign or re-architecture. So this one, if you go through the process, at least maybe start with the lift and shift prior to jumping to refactoring, reshaping. Um, you'll be able to at least be able you'll be able to familiarize yourself with the uniqueness of running an application in the cloud, and then without worrying much of unfamiliar technologies and familiar services, especially the with the way service providers calculate charges, how you're billed for each service that you're using. So if you face your migration, you will have enough time to assess and to learn these things, design things better, re-architect better, and yeah, if you're even planning to employ infrastructure as code, also you'll be able to at least learn and optimize your setup in the cloud prior to having that IAC, because moving from not having an IAC and then jumping to a state where you're already also maintaining that IAC, because IAC code is also something that you have to maintain down the line. It's not just write a code and then you'll be able to use it whenever you want. Uh, at some point, you also need to operate it, to maintain it. So it's really important to give your people some time to learn it, not adapt, embrace, jump to a lot of complicated technologies at one time. So yeah, Yeah, I hope you've learned something from this session. If you have questions, feel free to shoot me an email, book me a meeting, and yeah, I'll be very happy to accommodate those questions. All right. Thank you very much.